Morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am your friendly neighborhood homeschooling guru, and that was my husband passing behind me. And I'm hoping that all these streams are working. So one of them is going live right now, and it looks like LinkedIn has gone live. So yay, everything seems to be working. It would be wonderful. And so stay with us for more fun about high school, transcripts, all that stuff. So many people talking about this and asking questions on Facebook and other groups. What do you do for those teenage high school years? We'll talk about that and more in just 2 minutes. Hello, and thank you for staying with us. And if you're watching on the replay, please don't hesitate to put that in the comments bar. I am Gail Hanlon, and I have been in free learning and alternative education for over 30 years. And so this is what I love. It's my passion, and I love helping people about with every question or every concern that they may have with their children. So happy to say we seem to be live on all platforms: Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, 3 different Facebook platforms. So we should be able to get everybody in. If not, you can always watch it on the replay. So today we are going to be talking about what do we do for those teenage years. It's so hard to know because we don't even know what's happening in the world, for the next 5 years. How are our kids supposed to know? So let's talk about what's conventional, right? Conventional is they do high school. That's what we have been told. So grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, and grade 12. Some places have grade 13, and we did when I was in high school. So, and what does that mean? So when we take our kids out of school to homeschool, here's a big thing that you probably knew, but if you didn't, may come as a surprise. When you remove your children from attendance at private or at public school, You are no longer required to jump through the hoops that kids in school have to do, right? Just because the schools measure success, advancement, progress in the way of grade levels and in the form of grades and standardized tests, does not mean that you have to. When you remove yourself from that system, you are truly giving yourself license to explore the whole world as your classroom. So don't ever think that you have to still follow their guidelines, right? Now, we've conventionally been taught, my new favorite quote, we were taught to be taught, so we learned to be led. How do we break free from that? How do we break free from being those people that are told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it? Well, it's creativity. And as everybody who's seen Sir Ken Robinson's video on creativity, his TED Talk, will know, there's a lot more to it. We're losing our creative spark. And in fact, there's a wonderful little video that I would love to share with you. Let me see if I can. I didn't plan for this. I didn't think about it. And so this is a spur of the moment thought. And it's a study by NASA on creative genius and kids. And I'm sure that I have it really close by here. So let me just pull that up and go into this. I know it's here really quickly. All right. Well, first of all, you might want to refresh the creativity thing from Sir Ken Robinson. And this is just a very short 1.5-minute clip. So I'm going to open that up now and see if I can.
Speaker, I would like you to meet Miss
1930s, and ADHD hadn't been invented, at this point, so it wasn't an available condition. People weren't aware they could have that. Anyway, she went to see this specialist. So this oak-paneled room, and she was there with her mother, and she was led and sat on this chair at the end, and she sat on her hands for 20 minutes while this man talked to her mother about all the problems Gillian was having at school. And at the end of it, because she was disturbing people, her homework was always late and so on, little kid of 8, in the end, the doctor went and sat next to Gillian and said, "Gillian, I've listened to all these things that your mother's told me. I need to speak to her privately." So he said, "Wait here, we'll be back. We won't be very long." And they went and left her. But as they went out the room, he turned on the radio that was sitting on his desk. And when they got out the room, he said to her mother, "Just stand and watch her." And the minute they left the room, she said she was on her feet, moving to the music. And they watched for a few minutes, and he turned to her mother, and he said, "Mrs. Lynn, Gillian isn't sick. She's a dancer. Take her to a dance school." I said, "What happened?" He said, "She did. I can't tell you how wonderful it was. We walked in this room, and it was full of people like me. People who couldn't sit still. People who had to move to think. They did ballet."
So you can watch the rest of that. Just look up Sir Ken Robinson and TED Talk. Do Schools Kill Creativity? That's the title of it. And if you haven't seen it before, I highly recommend it. Because I want you to focus on what he said there. How the student, how the person learned best. How that young woman learned. So it was looking at her, observing her, who she was, how she learned, not telling her how to do things, but observing her innate genius, her innate ability. And that's what we need to do with all of our teenagers. So if you have a teenager or somebody who's approaching a grade 9 level and you're stressed and anxious about what they're going to do in the future, stop, take a breath, deep breath, relax, take a look, and really, if you haven't done this before, get to know your teen, your child. Learn from observing them what they're interested in, how they learn, how they draw in knowledge that they're interested in. What is it that keeps them focused? What is it that draws their attention, and why? Talk to them, ask them. Because, as I said at the beginning, those grade levels are arbitrary for outside the system. Inside the system, they have a purpose in that system, but not outside that system. So you might have been told that you can't get a good job without good grades. You can't get a good job without going to post-secondary education. Post-secondary education is just one option of what you can do with your life. And you don't have to wait until you're 18 or 19 to do that. You can progress if you remove the obstacle of grade levels from your children. Your children can progress at their optimum level instead of being forced to jump through these hoops that other people think they should know. We need to really carefully look at what our expectations are for them, and where did we get those expectations? How did those expectations become part of our standard mindset? So when we look at that, we see all the diversity in our children, all the wonderful things that they are interested in. And then we are there to support them, just like we were when we were taking their first steps and we're smiling and saying, "Come here, I got you, you're good, you can do this." And they take their first steps with our encouragement, with our attention, and with our support. Okay, so here's this bit that I wanted to show you about the information from NASA. And I want you to, we'll review it after it's done. I think it's only like, I think it's just a minute or less, actually 25 seconds. So listen carefully. And
1930s, and ADHD hadn't been invented.
And this is troubling. In a test for creative potential developed for NASA, it has been shown repeatedly that 98% of children score at the creative genius level at age 4 to 5. 5 years later, only 30% score that high. And 5 years after that, only 12%. A nearly 90% decline. Among adults 25 and up, less than 2% do that well.
okay, that was really fast, but let's review that. So we've got, and I'm gonna, I pull it up on my side just so that I can stay with you here. And I'm gonna change the, there we go, stop that. Okay, so between 4 and 5 years old, 98% of all children score at the creative genius level. Think about that. 4 and 5 years old. 98% of our kids are at a creative genius level. Then, a little bit further on,
98% of children score at the creative genius level at age 4 to 5. 5 years later.
5 years later, so they're 10 years old, only 30% score at that creative genius level. Then what do we have?
Only 30% scored that high. And 5 years after that, only 12%.
5 years after that, so we're looking at 15 years old, and only 12% of kids score at the creative genius level. We could go on to the next part, but think about what that means and what has happened in a child's life between the ages of 5 and 15. What do they do for the bulk of their day? So what are the factors that are involved in reducing their creative genius level or eliminating their creative genius level? School. They go to school every day and they lose their creativity, just like Sir Ken Robinson said. So how do we enable or reconnect our children with their creative genius level? Well, what did they do before they went to school? They played. And play is such an important thing. There are so many resources, and one of them is Free to Learn by Peter Gray. You want to read that. You want to have that resource in your library. You want to look it up. You want to find it on Audible. You want to listen to it. And then there are several more. One of which is in an excellent podcast by 1,000 Hours Outside. If you just look up 1,000 Hours Outside, you will be able to find that podcast. And highly recommend that for your own professional development, your own personal development, to be able to relax and stop being anxious, stop being stressed. That's easy to say, harder to do, but you have to, it's self-regulation. And you take a breath and you observe your kids and you see what matters to them. And then when you support them in that, then you'll have a much more healthy relationship with your children, and your children will feel more in control of their own success and future. So we're talking about removing grade levels, and oh my gosh, that's such a big thing. How do they go from being a young kid into post-secondary or entrepreneurship? There are so many different fields that they can get into, and we're going to talk about that on another show. But they don't all have to go to post-secondary. We want it to be an option for them, and that's fine, because most of the kids that I've worked with and helped have gotten into post-secondary in very unique ways, and not necessarily a transcript. So some places, some kids have wanted a transcript to put forward. I'm not saying you don't have the choice. You have the choice to do grade levels. You have the choice to follow the credit system and all of that. But does it really support what your student is doing? I know my oldest daughter, she was an academic. If she didn't have a class to go to or a thing to do, she would be climbing the walls. So she loved the academia and loved taking courses and went to university at 13. And that was just her, I let her play. I put her in, opportunities to play, and she hated it. She hated playing, although it's so important, but that wasn't the way she learned. So there are lots of kids, and everybody learns differently. There are as many ways to learn as there are kids to learn. And when you revisit that, there are as many ways to learn as there are kids to learn. everybody's an individual. Everybody's unique. And that's why we need to get to know our kids. There are options for
Or vice
that
versa.
high school time frame in their lives, the youths. And if you missed it, there was an international youth conference that just took place November 6th and 7th on the weekend. And I can probably put a link to that information in the comments, because it was all run by youth. So how do we as adults know how to be there for our kids, how to support them, how to help them be successful in their future lives? They have most of the answers. They know that if they want to find something out, they go on YouTube and look it up. Or TikTok. Or a ton of different things that they have access to that can help them learn what they want to learn. And the one top thing that has been resounded through all the groups and all the clubs that I've been active with, when they ask the question, what did you not learn in school or in your youth that you should have learned or needed to learn? And 100% is financial literacy, financial information, because it's all different now. You don't sit down and do, you can do budgets with kids, but they pay by a tap or a credit card or online on PayPal. It's a totally different world. So learning financial information, financial safety is another thing. And when I say financial safety, I'm talking about when kids get into relationships or when they are dealing with banks or other institutions, that they need to understand, they need the opportunity to understand how they could be taken advantage of and how not to be taken advantage of. So it's important to make that information available to them. They may not be interested in it, and that's okay, but it is a part of their real life, and they will find themselves coming up against it, and they'll want to not be taken advantage of. So I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing any comments here. Okay. So what happens in the high school if you don't use grade levels? If you don't have any standardized tests, what do you do? First thing, relax. Take a look at your child, your student, and get to know them and what they are interested in. They might surprise you. They might be interested in something like video games. If they play a lot of video games, you should really take a good hard look at what they're doing, because that's really valuable information. It's really valuable skills. Surgeons use high-tech video support systems in surgery. And so being able to be accurate and knowledgeable about how to maneuver things is really important. Some want to be YouTubers. That's all they want to do, is be a YouTuber. And people think that's bad. But they learn lighting, sound, professionalism. They learn audience. They learn camera angles. They learn so much that is of value and legitimate information for the entertainment industry, or just film and television, documentaries, all sorts of things. It's phenomenal what's out there for them to be involved in, and the critical experience that they are having in trying to do this. And they're going to YouTube to learn how to do it. They're going to Reddit to ask the questions. They're going on TikTok to find people who are already doing it, who they can learn from. That's research. They are doing the things that they need to do. We might not know what careers they'll have, but believe me, they're not stupid. And this conference on November 6th and 7th was a perfect example of that, because it was completely run by youth. And very relevant topics: sustainability, climate change, you name it. All the important things were there. And they are telling us what they need from us. So I look forward to answering any questions. And if you have a specific situation with your teen that you're having a challenge with, especially now that certain places will require a transcript from homeschool elementary grades, which is kind of ridiculous because it's not required anywhere. Nobody requires it anywhere.
And flat tires.
And so it's creating an opportunity for, us to learn how to interpret what our kids do into language that the people expecting it will understand. So one of the things I do is I help students go through their everyday lives, everyday activities, their interests, and help them reword the documentation of that into EduSpeak. And that's very sad, because that is what people who are in the system would expect. Now, like I said, getting into post-secondary education is not always needed. Young woman who's a manager at one of the biggest banks in Canada, she never went to university. Everybody who is in her team that she oversees in her department, they all have been to university, but she never went to school, never went to university. And you can find more out about kids like her and other people. There's several books. One is called, I'm going to flip my camera around here, so just take me a second here.
That's what made me think Tony would be
Real
perfect.
Lives, 11 Teenagers Who Don't Go to School. Online, you can look up Peter Gray's Psychology Today article, and that's documentation and information from 75 plus kids who are adults now who never went to school. So don't be surprised. And we are blessed with Judy Arnall, who has the Unschooling to University guide. I want to make sure I stress, though, post-secondary school is not always a necessity, but our children should know it's an option if they choose it. There's an excellent book called Skip College. And when it says college, it means university as well. Fabulous book. There are so many resources, and I do have a problem with that. Even though it's wonderful to have all these resources, you could spend your whole life researching and reading and never actually do. So make sure you time manage so that you get the opportunity to really research and do what you're doing with your teenagers. So if you're stressed and wondering about your student, or any issues at all, please don't hesitate to message me. I'd be happy to help point you in the right direction. My goal in life is to be redundant. I want to help you know what to do so that you don't need me anymore. So I'm only here for a short time, but I want to help you be the best you can be, and without the stress, without the anxiety, and with all the freedom and all the creativity and all the positive relationships and positivity that you can have in your life. So I'm Gail Hanlon, and this is the end of our show for today. Thanks again for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next week.